this won't take more than an hour, hopefully. So yeah, I have set the meeting, so it ends at 12:30, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so got my little notes in hand. So if I'm looking like in this direction, that's me looking at my notes. Hi, this is Maya from the King's Business Review, and today I'm delighted to be talking to Zeta from this year's King's iGEM team. So first off, I'd like to say a huge congratulations for the silver medal your team won this year. It's an amazing achievement, and I'm sure we'll get an even greater appreciation of just how much of an achievement this is as the interview progresses. So first off, could you please give a little introduction to yourself and what your role was in this year's iGEM team?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Zeta. I'm currently in my 3rd year of my M.Sci. Pharmacology degree, doing a placement year at GlaxoSmithKline. And I was involved in this year's KCL iGEM team as one of the team leads for this year. So my role was basically kind of involved coordinating the team, making sure that tasks got done at a certain, prior to the deliverables that were due, and kind of just arranging the team in general and just making sure that things kind of were coherent in that way. Oh, sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, sort of like logistics and handling the finer details. Very cool. And could you explain what iGEM is to people who aren't aware of the project?
Yeah, sure. So basically, iGEM stands for the International Genetically Engineered Machine Competition. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful. And it's basically a synthetic biology competition. So you have teams from all around the world, from institutions all around the world, basically utilizing synthetic biology to solve like a global problem. And that can vary. That can be either like a healthcare problem that hasn't yet been addressed, or is kind of more widespread in that way. It can be environmental, and it can be, manufacturing, and all these are different streams within the iGEM competition. And based on obviously what your project is, you get classified in those different streams, if that makes sense.
That does, thank you. So I understand that this year's iGEM project was in the therapeutics stream.
Yeah,
and you essentially created your own therapeutics company called Sememco Therapeutics. So could you please enlighten us on what this sort of entailed?
Yeah, of course. So basically, Sememco Therapeutics is more of a fictional company. So initially, obviously, we kind of wanted to go into therapeutics in the first place, but once we got into, the healthcare problems that are, very pressing around the world, we kind of got more into Alzheimer's disease and neurodegenerative disease in general. And that's kind of how we came about Sememco. And obviously synthetic biology involves a lot of genetic engineering. So we had to come up with essentially a system that would enable us to produce, a substance, for example, to essentially cure Alzheimer's disease. And so that's why we used bacteria, E. coli. And that's kind of how the name comes from, Sememco. Memory and E. coli synthetic biology. Yeah, so that's how it came about it.
Nice. So could you go into just like a brief explanation of the science behind this? So you used E. coli to genetically engineer a sort of compound for Alzheimer's treatment?
Exactly, yeah. So all of this is theoretical. Obviously, because of the time constraints of the iGEM competition, we couldn't get a very extensive proof of concept. However, obviously, we tried to have that system express the compound that we were kind of targeting, which is pterostilbene, by the way. So it involved a lot of literature reviews over and over again, just trying to find kind of the necessary system that would enable us biologically to produce the compound that we wanted, using the system that we wanted. So there were a lot of hours and work that has gone into it, and thanks to the team members, we're here today. So yeah, I guess we did something, right?
Yeah, that's definitely more than something. That sounds so exciting, and it's such an important cause as well. And I think it's such a unique opportunity as students to be given the chance to create something on that level and present it on an international stage. So it all sounds absolutely fascinating. And I understand that the project was divided into sub-teams. So what were the different elements of the project, and what did each group contribute to the broader aim?
Exactly. So obviously the foundation of it is the science, right? So if we don't have the science, right, we can't really build upon anything, because that's essentially what a company stands for. So we had a wet lab team, which was, as I said before, briefly kind of like involved in finalizing that system of expression. Again, just utilizing synthetic biology, so kind of more focused on the proof of concept aspect of it. We also have a dry lab team that worked closely with the wet lab team, kind of, again, just trying to finalize that proof of concept. Then we had the entrepreneurship team that was kind of involved in more kind of taking that idea and marketing it and putting it together as like a, potential company, right? So that involved a lot of like reaching out to stakeholders, potentially seeing if, our product would be marketable in some way and, would have an audience that it would potentially be of interest to. We also had a human practices team, again, just trying to make sure that we were targeting the right audience, and the problem that we were addressing, which was in this case Alzheimer's disease, was indeed a pressing issue, and we were just addressing it, something that has already been addressed, if that makes sense. And then we had like a finance subgroup, which was more involved around, obviously, because this is completely self-funded, so we kind of had to fundraise, to enable the team to go to Paris or to register for the iGEM competition. So that was an important aspect. And that's something that Nikki, Alex, and I kind of took on as well. Just, again, part of the organizing and coordinating of the team in general.
Wow, that sounds very involved. I think it's fair to say it's more than just a science project. Like it's way more than just the proof of concept of actually getting to create this compound, and saying this can be a treatment, but also the multiple aspects surrounding therapeutic technology and synthetic biology. So it's very, very exciting. And I've heard that this whole experience, all of your hard work sort of culminated in a final presentation in Paris called the Jamboree. So what was that experience like?
Right, so unfortunately I couldn't attend the Jamboree.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because of my placement. So
Right.
GSK has very strict rules in terms of what you can and cannot present when you're working at the company in terms of competition, etc. So unfortunately I couldn't attend, but I was there in spirit, and I was very glad that they did well.
Definitely,
yeah, because it's almost like, even though I wasn't there, it's almost like all the work and efforts that the team has collectively put in kind of was worth it, and resulted in an award that we're proud of. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess an alternative question would be, how did it feel going from months and months of hard work and late nights to see it sort of culminate in a final product in its final form?
I'd say it was really odd for me because, obviously you put in the slide deck, for example, and it all seems like so well put together and everything, but like realistically there was a lot of blood, sweat and tears that were behind that slide deck, and it was months and months of work. So it, just managing to narrow it down into like a slide deck that's only like 10-15 minutes long, like it was very odd to grasp, if that makes sense. Because obviously the experience, I'm assuming from what I've kind of been alluding to, you've understood that it was quite hard for everyone, and kind of, pushing yourself to kind of your limits when it comes to, delivering and making sure that things are adhered to, and, just obviously as a team lead, like you kind of in charge of a group of like 15-16 people, right? And obviously like all of these people are completely capable, but it ultimately comes down to you and your decisions that affect the team, if that makes sense. So there was a lot of stress that has gone into it, but I'm just glad to see that we were able to push through in the end and get the result that we did.
Yeah, and what an amazing result, silver medal. It's huge, and such a big achievement for just the King's community as well in general. And what would you say was the highlight of this whole experience?
So if I could pinpoint it, I'd say just like the different people that you work with, because obviously is very difficult to explain because those people are my peers, like we're the same age, we do the same degree, but somehow Nikki, Alex, and I were still kind of in charge of leading them. So it was a very like odd environment to be put in because I wasn't really familiar with any leadership stuff before. Like I wasn't in charge of leading anything to that scale before. So I guess that was the most challenging bit, but also kind of the highlight because I feel like now I'm in a much better position and more able to kind of lead potentially again, or like I'm more familiar with how to treat people in a way to progress in a cascade of things, that kind of thing. So I guess that was kind of the highlight of from my point of view, and that I'm taking with me from the experience altogether.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because from what you're saying, it sounds like it's very like a very professional setting where everything's organized like in a way that an actual company would. So you're getting so much professional skills that otherwise you just wouldn't be able to get until you graduate. That's fascinating. And what would you say, was there anything unexpected or surprising that you found about the experience? Anything that particularly you found challenging?
I think again the professionalism that you kind of mentioned, like I was very pleasantly surprised that everyone was so on board with everything and so professional and adhered to the deadlines, because don't forget, like we kind of devote a whole summer into this, like those people, and self-funded, we don't really get paid for it, so all of these people that took part could have easily went and did something that was funded via KCL or another institution. So the fact that everyone was there every single day at like 9:30 a.m. just like working on the tasks and within the subgroups, etc., like that was very pleasantly surprising to me and very inspiring as well, because you're surrounded by people that have those goals and share those goals with you. So it just kind of motivates you a lot as well at the same time. So yeah, that's something that pleasantly surprised me.
Yeah, it does sound like, even when I was talking to Nikki and Alex as well, the dedication and not just that, but just the passion that everyone has when they talk about iGEM is so palpable. And you can really tell that everyone is so deeply invested in this. And they're doing it because it's exciting for them and they really believe in it. Yeah, did you find that just in general, like the sort of community spirit, and sort of how the team worked? How was that environment, I guess?
Yeah, so obviously, I think most people were heavily involved within their subgroups. So, sorry, my chat. In terms of that environment, everyone's kind of heavily involved within each subgroup, and that's kind of the most interactions that they were having were within this subgroups as well. So I think it was really interesting because you knew that like when you came in that classroom at 9:30 a.m., everyone will be in the subgroups doing work. So I guess in terms of that togetherness, it was like more subgroup specific, I'd say, but like obviously we knew that like everything linked back together, right? Because that's what iGEM is. Like you have to link all those subgroups together in order to achieve the desired results. So at the end of the day, like we knew that like everyone had each other's backs. Is just kind of from my experience, it was more subgroup based.
Sorry, I forgot the mic was on. I see. Yeah, that's very, very cool. And I understand that applications will be opening soon for the 2023 iGEM team. So will you be involved in that next year, do you think?
So I'm actually president this year of the Biotechnology and Synthetic Biology Society, and that's kind of the society that's affiliated with iGEM. So we kind of are in charge of recruiting for the iGEM competition, and we're directly affiliated with the KCL iGEM team. So yeah, it's kind of and Nikki is the vice president of the society, so it's kind of our main responsibility to be in charge of the recruiting process. So we actually have an introductory event to iGEM happening next week. So keep an eye on that on our social media. But yeah, so we're basically going to give people like kind of like an overview of what our experience entailed, and just, you know, seeing if this is something that they would like to do, because as I said before, like the iGEM is a huge commitment, and you know, we kind of want people that would be in this for the long term, if that makes sense. So we want people who are committed. So that's, we're basically giving them a taster for what's to come, and those that are interested can apply later on.
I think by the time this interview comes out, the event will have already passed, but I'm hoping there'll be a recording somewhere where people can watch and learn more about the iGEM team. And what advice would you give to students who are considering applying for next year's team?
So I'd say, so the application process is a bit overwhelming. I don't know if we're going to keep the same format this year, that's to be decided. But basically, you have like the initial application form that, you know, is quite generic, kind of like, oh, what are your motivations for applying to be part of the iGEM team, and why you're interested in synthetic biology, that kind of thing. And based off that application form, you get invited to like, well, okay, so I like to kind of compare this to an assessment center if you apply to like a big company. So you kind of get invited with like all of the people that were shortlisted essentially, and then you kind of get split into like little teams, and then you have like a coordinator within each team, that kind of thing. And then later on you get invited to like a one-to-one interview with one of the instructors for the iGEM team, because basically how it works is that obviously you have the team members, the team leaders, then you have the instructors, which are usually the last year's cohort team leads. So usually would be either Nikki, Alex, or I. And then after that, you have like two professors usually that are kind of like in charge of coordinating the whole thing. So yeah, so you have like a one-to-one with the professors. And yeah, that's usually how it goes. But my advice would be just honestly just be yourself. Like, for you to be able to apply to iGEM in the first place, it means, you know, that something sparked an interest in you. So just kind of try to explore that aspect. And honestly, just don't worry much about the knowledge specific stuff. I feel like that kind of is a part of the process. You know, no one's expecting you to go into it like knowing exactly what your project will be, exactly how you're going to tackle it. That's why we're recruiting so many people, right? Because like, you know, we kind of want to get that diversity in terms of, you know, the way of thinking, etc., etc. So, you know, if we're expecting you to do this by yourself, we wouldn't have recruited that many people. So I think just be yourself and try to truly explore what interests you in the field of science in general, and ultimately synthetic biology.
So is it fair to say you're looking more for potential and enthusiasm rather than pre-existing skills or knowledge?
Exactly. I'd say so, from my experience at least.
And you said you were looking for sort of diverse sort of backgrounds or skill sets, so that everyone contributes in their different, unique ways. Is it open to students of all courses and all years?
Yeah, it is actually. So basically last year, obviously because we want to create that legacy of iGEM, and because last year's project was completely kind of new, so we had to actually derive one ourselves. They were kind of focusing on recruiting more first year students, because again, that would kind of guarantee the legacy of the project itself. But yeah, it's open to like all students from all years. I was a second year when I applied, so yeah, and I feel like if anything, that's an asset to the KSL iGEM team, because one of the deliverables, for example, I'm going to say an example. So for this year was creating like a wiki page, so like a whole website from scratch essentially. And you know, we had a student that studies computer science and artificial intelligence, so they were an asset in, you know, creating the website, because none of us had coded before in that setting. None of us had done HTML, CSS before, all these coding languages. So, you know, being from a different background that is not necessarily life science like me or other people, like makes you such an asset to the team. So I don't want people to be discouraged, like, oh, this is just like a life science competition. It's really not. Like, it's just a matter of how all these skills that different people have linked together to be coherent in that way that I mentioned initially.
Mm-hmm. I see. And that sort of reflects how science is on a broader scale as well. It's not just the life scientists in their stereotypical lab coats doing pipettes all the time. Like it's a whole range of different people who are involved from start to finish.
Exactly.
So it truly is a project that's sort of open to everyone, and applications are open. Amazing. And so to sort of go to a more of a fun question, I guess, what excites you most about the future of biotechnology and synthetic biology? Because it's such a new field, and it feels like there's so much enthusiasm for it, especially for our generation who are sort of paving the way, and sort of defining what synthetic biology becomes, I guess. So yeah, what excites you most?
Yeah. So I think obviously being the president of the KCL Biotechnology and Synthetic Biology Society, that's sorry, that's really allowed me to kind of, obviously because we host quite a lot of events like within the field of synbio. So that's allowed me to, really explore all these different aspects because synthetic biology is really limitless. Like you don't like its applications are limitless. Like there's some applications that we are not even aware of. So the fact that I am able to kind of interact with professors or experts in the field that we invite for our events, to give a lecture or anything like that, like it really inspires me as well, and it really broadens kind of my knowledge within the field. So I wouldn't say I have pinpointed like a specific thing within the field that I am particularly interested in, but there's so many applications of it. It's just insane. So, sky's the limit, and I'm, exploring all those different fields with everyone else. So, yeah.
I see, there's so much potential. Yeah, exciting stuff. So thank you so much for all your answers so far. Is there anything you didn't get to mention during this half an hour? Any last thoughts or anything else?
I think if you're interested in applying for the KCL iGEM team, I say just as I said before, kind of like don't worry too much about the science specific skills, and just overall kind of like my advice would be to just enjoy the experience as well. Again, like it's a very professional environment, but you're dedicating yourself whole summer to this, and you're working with people that are basically the same age as you, and have a similar academic background as you. So if you can make that like a social thing as well, which I think maybe our cohort didn't have as much, maybe that would be the ultimate combination in my opinion, because that helps you maximize that relationship that you have with like your team members, for example, and that actually maximizes the output that you get at the end as well. So if you're able to not only turn this into a sport in your professional career, but also a sport in your social kind of life, I feel like those two link really, really well, and that's ultimately what the iGEM competition is. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been such an insightful interview. And it really feels like there are a bunch of passionate people who are behind this project. And I really hope that people watching this will consider applying for next year's iGEM, because it really sounds like such a unique opportunity. Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I will click end recording.